The courtroom was tense. Every eye fixed on the two figures at the center of the storm. On one side, Brett Kavanaugh, the Supreme Court Justice whose very name carried the weight of power, privilege, and controversy. On the other, Jasmine Crockett, a rising voice of integrity and courage. Calm yet resolute, her gaze unwavering. The air was thick with anticipation, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Kavanaugh leaned forward, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth, as if he already assumed victory. "Are you certain you understand the constitutional implications?" he asked, his tone dripping with condescension. The room chuckled softly, the kind of nervous laughter that only deepened the tension. Everyone expected the sharp rebuke, the trembling rebuttal, the hesitant pause, but Crockett did none of those. She inhaled once, letting the weight of history settle over her shoulders, then spoke. Her voice was measured, yet it carried an unmistakable force that silenced even the murmurs. "With all due respect, Justice Kavanaugh, it is not my understanding that is in question. It is the interpretation that has been bending under convenience for too long." The courtroom went still. Papers rustled, pens stopped scratching, cameras clicked, but no one dared break the silence. It was a statement that cut deeper than any prepared remark, one line that pierced the veneer of authority and exposed a truth the powerful often avoid. Kavanaugh's smirk faltered, replaced by a fleeting glimpse of uncertainty, a shadow crossing the facade of control he so carefully maintained. The audience shifted in their seats, feeling the electricity of the moment, the realization that this was not a typical exchange, but the opening salvo of a confrontation that would ripple far beyond the walls of the chamber. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. What came next would determine not only the course of this exchange, but the very measure of courage, intellect, and moral authority. The world outside waited unknowingly, but inside that room, the stage was set. And Jasmine Crockett, with a single unwavering statement, had just signaled that this battle would not be won by arrogance, but by truth. But the question remained. Could anyone truly silence her, or was this the beginning of a reckoning that no power could contain? The courtroom had settled into a tense rhythm, but outside, the stakes could not have been higher. Every word spoken here mattered, not just for the two figures on the floor, but for the countless Americans watching, wondering who would emerge as the voice of reason and who would fall prey to arrogance. This confrontation was about more than legal technicalities. It was a battle over the very interpretation of the Constitution, a fight for the principles that define a nation. Brett Kavanaugh, a figure of immense authority, carried the weight of precedent, tradition, and the institutional power of the Supreme Court. His reputation alone commanded attention, and many assumed that authority would intimidate even the boldest challengers. Yet Jasmine Crockett, armed not with titles, but with clarity, conviction, and an unshakable understanding of the law, had already disrupted that assumption. Every gaze in the room tracked her movements, every ear tuned to her words. People outside would later recall this as a pivotal moment, a reminder that truth does not need permission to speak. The tension escalated with every passing second. Kavanaugh attempted to frame the discussion, questioning interpretations, citing rulings, and attempting to assert control over the narrative. But Crockett remained poised, responding with precision, exposing inconsistencies, and highlighting principles that even the most seasoned jurists could not dismiss. It was clear that this was more than a debate. It was a reckoning, a collision between entitlement and accountability. For the audience, both present and remote, the atmosphere was electric. Social media feeds would later explode with fragments of her statements, hashtags trending in real time, commentary dissecting every nuance of her delivery. Supporters saw in Crockett a reflection of their own frustrations with systems that often rewarded power over principle. Critics, meanwhile, struggled to reconcile the elegance of her argument with the weight of the courtroom's traditions. But one thing became undeniable. This was a turning point. And yet, the deeper significance extended beyond political alignment or partisan loyalty. Crockett's calm authority demonstrated that knowledge, integrity, and moral courage could confront and even unsettle the most entrenched powers. It was a lesson not just for Kavanaugh, but for the public. The law is not an instrument of intimidation. It is a framework for justice. The realization left a quiet awe in the room, a sense that what was unfolding was historic, that the balance between authority and accountability could shift in a single, resolute voice. What came next would test every assumption, challenge every expectation, and push both hero and villain to their limits. The stage was set for a confrontation that no one would forget. Brett Kavanaugh's rise to the Supreme Court was a story woven with privilege, ambition, and controversy. From the earliest stages of his career, he was known for his sharp intellect, impeccable legal training, and a relentless drive to ascend the echelons of power. But alongside those qualities lurked a pattern of entitlement, a confidence in his own authority that often bordered on arrogance. To many, Kavanaugh represented the establishment, a figure whose decisions were shaped as much by allegiance and perception as by principle. Throughout his tenure, he became a symbol of the system's contradictions. His rulings, celebrated by some, were criticized by others as inconsistent or politically convenient. Questions arose about whether personal ambition had ever clouded impartial judgment. And while Kavanaugh projected an image of calm, deliberate authority, those who studied his career closely noted the cracks, moments of defensiveness, subtle displays of irritation when challenged, a visible reliance on reputation to carry him through scrutiny. The courtroom, in particular, was a space where his confidence became almost performative. He wielded tradition like a weapon, citing precedent to intimidate, assuming that the weight of his office alone would quiet dissent. Those who dared to confront him often found themselves met with a blend of condescension and tactical evasion. He had learned to command attention, to assert dominance not just through legal reasoning, but through presence, posture, and timing. Yet beneath that veneer of unshakable authority, the moments that Crockett would later exploit were already evident. Kavanaugh's reliance on assumption over engagement, on stature over substance, left openings. His credibility, though formidable, was vulnerable to exposure when faced with precision, moral clarity, and unwavering resolve. In this moment, the audience could sense it, the tension between power and accountability, between perceived infallibility and the simple truth that no title can shield someone from scrutiny. As Jasmine Crockett prepared to speak, the room seemed to lean into those cracks, sensing that Kavanaugh's polished image might not withstand the force of a voice that refused to bend. The stage was set and the anticipation was electric. The villain of this story, confident yet fragile, was about to confront a challenger whose courage and clarity could redefine the rules of engagement. The question now loomed. Could arrogance withstand integrity, or was this the moment the scales would finally tip? Jasmine Crockett's story was one of resilience, determination, and unwavering principle, a journey that would prepare her for moments exactly like this. Born into a world that often underestimated her, she learned early that dignity and perseverance were the weapons of the overlooked and underestimated. Every obstacle she faced, every challenge imposed by circumstance or prejudice, became a step toward a greater understanding of justice and a deeper commitment to public service. From her earliest days in law school to her first cases as a practicing attorney, Crockett displayed a combination of intellectual rigor and moral clarity that set her apart. She studied not just the letter of the law, but the principles that gave it meaning. Where others saw bureaucracy, she saw opportunities to advocate for those whose voices had been silenced. Her work was rooted in the communities she represented. Communities whose struggles were often ignored by the powerful, whose rights were challenged by those who relied on privilege and influence rather than fairness. As her career progressed, Crockett's reputation grew, not because she sought fame, but because she demanded accountability. She was unafraid to confront entrenched systems and hold them to the standards they claimed to uphold. Her speeches, her legal arguments, and her public appearances consistently reflected a rare combination of intellect, poise, and courage, a hero's foundation built on authenticity rather than performance. People admired her not only for her skill, but for her ability to transform knowledge into action, to wield truth as a weapon that could not be undermined by intimidation. The courtroom, where Kavanaugh now sat, had seen many skilled attorneys, but few had the combination of preparation, conviction, and empathy that Crockett brought. Her presence alone commanded attention. She represented more than herself. She embodied the struggles, hopes, and resilience of countless Americans who demanded integrity from their leaders. Her understanding of the Constitution was not abstract. It was lived, informed by experience, and guided by the principle that law must serve justice, not power. As she prepared to confront Kavanaugh, the audience could sense her readiness. This was more than a debate. It was a culmination of years of preparation, every hardship she had overcome now converging into a moment of reckoning. Crockett's calm confidence radiated, signaling that she was not merely participating in a confrontation. She was defining it. The stage was set for a showdown that would test intellect, courage, and moral clarity. When the moment came, her voice would not only challenge a Supreme Court justice, it would reverberate across the nation, demanding truth and accountability in a way that could not be ignored. The courtroom crackled with tension as the debate intensified. Kavanaugh, his usual composure giving way to subtle irritation, attempted to dominate the conversation with his rapid-fire questions and pointed assertions. His tone, once measured, now carried an edge, a clear signal that he recognized Crockett as a force unlike any he had faced before. Every glance, every interruption, seemed calculated to unsettle her, to test the limits of her patience and confidence. Crockett, however, remained unflinching. Each question was met with a calm, precise response that cut through the veneer of intimidation. Her voice carried authority, tempered by clarity and unwavering conviction. She reframed his attacks, exposing contradictions in his logic without raising her voice, proving that true power lies not in volume, but in substance. The audience sensed a shift. The balance of control was tilting, even if only subtly at first. Kavanaugh's frustration became palpable. He attempted to belittle her arguments, suggesting in half-measured tones that her interpretations were idealistic or simplistic. But Crockett countered with undeniable facts, citing precedent and constitutional principles with meticulous accuracy. Every interruption he threw her way was met with composure. Every attempt to assert dominance subtly dismantled by her strategic, unwavering rebuttals. The courtroom watched in rapt silence. Witnesses and spectators leaned forward as Crockett's presence transformed the room. This was no longer a standard exchange of legal arguments. It had become a test of endurance, intellect, and moral authority. Kavanaugh's confident facade showed cracks, subtle yet unmistakable, while Crockett's calm persistence created a growing momentum that the audience could feel. As the debate escalated, the stakes became clear. This was more than a clash of legal minds. It was a battle for credibility, for respect, for the moral high ground. Every word, every pause, every carefully chosen phrase carried weight. The tension built to a near-palpable crescendo, leaving the audience on the edge of their seats, anticipating the moment when Crockett would strike with a counterargument so precise, so undeniable, that the courtroom would hold its collective breath. And then it came, the moment that would define the encounter, the mic-drop counterattack that would leave an indelible mark on everyone present. The room fell into a charged silence, every ear straining as Jasmine Crockett leaned forward, her hands poised but steady. This was the moment she had been preparing for, the culmination of years of study, practice, and unyielding resolve. Kavanaugh, expecting hesitation or a faltering reply, met her gaze and found none. Her eyes held clarity, authority, and the quiet confidence of someone who knew the truth and who understood the power of speaking it. Crockett began deliberately, each word chosen to resonate not just in the courtroom, but across the broader consciousness of justice. She dismantled his arguments with surgical precision, highlighting inconsistencies, emphasizing constitutional principles, and framing her points in a way that left no room for evasion. Where Kavanaugh relied on assumptions and the weight of his title, Crockett wielded substance and integrity. The contrast was stark. Arrogance versus reason, entitlement versus earned authority. As she spoke, the courtroom shifted. Gasps, subtle murmurs, and the faint shuffle of papers punctuated her sentences. Cameras clicked, recording each decisive point. The audience, both present and observing remotely, could sense the gravity of her assertions. Every clause she cited, every example she provided, chipped away at Kavanaugh's composure. Even his most confident expressions faltered under the weight of Crockett's calm but unyielding delivery. Her words carried the force of inevitability. She exposed assumptions, corrected misinterpretations, and reframed the debate entirely on her terms. Kavanaugh, once dominating the room with his presence, now found himself navigating precise terrain she had expertly mapped. It was a reversal of power, a moment where truth overrode intimidation. Crockett's articulation became a lesson in clarity, a demonstration that preparation and principle could outshine authority and status. By the time she concluded, the courtroom was stunned. Silence lingered, not the emptiness of shock, but the profound acknowledgement that a force had entered the room that could not be dismissed. Kavanaugh's carefully constructed demeanor had cracked, revealing subtle uncertainty, while Crockett stood unshaken, the embodiment of integrity and skill. The impact of her words was not confined to that moment. It was a ripple that would carry far beyond the walls, sparking conversation, admiration, and a renewed faith in the power of informed, courageous voices. The aftermath would be immediate and electric, as the nation collectively absorbed the consequences of what had just transpired. The courtroom emptied, but the echoes of Jasmine Crockett's words lingered long after the gavel fell. Social media erupted in real time, hashtags trending within minutes as clips of her counterattack circulated across platforms. Supporters celebrated her poise and intellectual mastery, sharing snippets of her arguments with captions like "truth over arrogance" and "courage in action." Memes spread that captured the precise moment Kavanaugh faltered, turning it into a symbol of accountability for millions. News outlets scrambled to report the confrontation, dissecting every word, every exchange. Analysts debated the implications, acknowledging that Crockett had not merely defended a legal position. She had redefined the narrative. Public opinion shifted rapidly as more people witnessed her command of the law and the clarity of her moral reasoning. Even commentators who had previously questioned her influence found themselves nodding, unable to ignore the impact she had made. Within political circles, the ripple effects were immediate. Allies celebrated her as a champion of justice, a figure who embodied the principles of diligence, integrity, and courage. Critics were forced to reconsider their positions, realizing that the spectacle of authority could no longer overshadow substance. The courtroom had become a stage, and Crockett had demonstrated that preparation, knowledge, and moral clarity could hold even the most powerful accountable. Across the country, citizens felt validation and empowerment. For many, Crockett's words were more than a legal argument. They were a reflection of shared frustrations and hopes. Her performance inspired conversations about accountability, representation, and the importance of standing firm against intimidation. The shockwaves extended far beyond the courtroom, reminding everyone that voices rooted in truth and courage could resonate louder than titles or status. And as the nation absorbed the magnitude of her performance, a deeper lesson emerged, one that would shape the dialogue far beyond this single confrontation. In the quiet aftermath, the lesson of Jasmine Crockett's confrontation with Brett Kavanaugh became clear. Integrity and preparation can outshine even the most intimidating authority. She had not sought to humiliate or dominate, but to illuminate, to remind everyone present and watching that the law serves justice, not ego. Her unwavering composure and precise reasoning demonstrated that true power lies in knowledge, clarity, and moral courage, rather than status or title. Across the nation, viewers reflected on what they had witnessed. Crockett's example resonated with those who had ever felt silenced, dismissed, or underestimated. Her performance reaffirmed that dignity, skill, and preparation can confront arrogance, and that courage is not measured by volume but by the clarity of one's convictions. It was a reminder that every voice matters, that standing firm in principle can spark change, and that moral authority transcends institutional power. The courtroom drama had become a microcosm of a larger truth. Societies thrive not when power is unchecked, but when it is held accountable by those willing to speak boldly and honestly. Crockett's calm yet forceful rebuttal illustrated the ripple effect of courage, how one prepared and principled voice can influence perceptions, inspire reflection, and ignite discussions that resonate far beyond the moment. Her confrontation with Kavanaugh became more than a single legal debate. It became a symbol of hope and empowerment. Audiences across political divides recognized the universal values at stake: truth, accountability, and the enduring principle that knowledge and moral clarity are the ultimate tools of justice. And as the nation absorbed the impact of her words, one truth remained undeniable. Courage coupled with preparation can leave an indelible mark, transforming moments of confrontation into timeless lessons for all who witness them. As the courtroom drama settled into history, the echoes of Jasmine Crockett's words continue to resonate, reminding viewers that truth and courage can never be silenced. Her confrontation with Brett Kavanaugh was more than a legal clash. It was a testament to preparation, principle, and unwavering moral clarity. Every argument, every pause, every decisive rebuttal had proven that integrity triumphs over arrogance, and that knowledge paired with conviction can redefine the balance of power. For those watching, this moment was both inspiration and challenge. It urged audiences to question authority, to seek understanding, and to stand firm in their own convictions. It was a call to action, to embrace courage, speak boldly, and ensure that justice and truth are upheld in every sphere of life. Crockett's example was not confined to a courtroom. It extended to every workplace, every community, and every conversation where integrity and accountability matter. If this story inspired you, if Crockett's courage and clarity resonated, join the movement. Subscribe to Argument Arena for more coverage of pivotal confrontations, bold truths, and lessons in courage and justice. Share this video, discuss it with friends, and be part of the conversation that holds power accountable. Every voice matters, and together, we can ensure that truth is heard, respected, and celebrated. The stage is set. The question now is, what will you do with your voice?